Well, hello there. Welcome to the back of my Jeep Compass. No, it's not a van life build yet. So if you've been following this vlog channel, probably not. But if you have been, then you know, earlier this year, my wife and I moved into a new apartment and did some vlogs about that and then some other random things. And then I kind of just stopped making vlogs for a little while. But long story short, we moved into our first apartment together and we've been making it okay. So before we moved into the apartment, we were kind of, trying to figure out the best way to make it because we're on a very, very modest budget, like teetering on, not being able to live on your own kind of small budget. And so we were trying to figure out ways to do things like shed conversion, tiny houses, all that kinds of stuff. But one of the big options, one of the cheapest ones probably, is something that we haven't quite forgotten about just yet. And that is van life. So nothing, of course, is set in stone just yet, but we've kind of considered it on and off. Still the tiny house stuff and all that. But for a number of reasons, we've considered things like van life or something similar. And we've actually got our lease coming up in a few months. And not that we would do anything immediately, but it's just, the freedom coming up to maybe try new things or see what the next step is and whatnot. So the discussion of van life has become more relevant once again. So what some of you may know is that the way I've been making money is via YouTube with an animation channel that primarily is for, kids. It's kids animation, kids cartoons or something like that. And as you may know, YouTube is complying with laws now, apparently. And it's got some big changes coming that may or may not affect channels like mine. It's yet to be seen exactly what the changes will be and like how it's going to affect people who do, kids content or anything that could be considered kid content because, obviously YouTube wants to protect themselves and it's going to be probably a somewhat broad definition. And, I would say that my animation channel definitely fits within the definition of kids content. So I am unaware exactly how much of an effect this will have on our finances. And so thinking of what our next step is going to be, how we're going to live and all that stuff is becoming more relevant as time goes on with all these changes coming up. But even so, like I said, we have considered the idea of van life before. And there's a number of pros and cons to it, and there's obviously, a lot of hurdles to get over just to get started doing it, so it's hard to say if we could just decide to do it. You have to really be determined and make sure you're willing to make it happen. But I thought I'd throw a little video together here just to kind of get the idea out there and sort of have a tangible way of, tackling the idea and the thought of it. And who knows, maybe some people who know better can stumble upon this video and offer some suggestions or advice in the comments. So obviously when it comes to something like van life, there's a number of pros and cons. The first obvious pro, I think, for a lot of people is that you get to travel a lot. And I've done a bit of traveling in my life, not a whole lot, but just a little bit, driving, hours from here to there and visiting places and things. And I've always really enjoyed it. Honestly, I kind of feel like I feel the most at home when I'm on the road. I don't know what it is, something about the freedom of your destination and all that kind of stuff. But, enjoying traveling and living in a van are two totally different things. Hopefully the two loves could merge together and be a good combination for a lot of people. But, I really don't know. That's quite the leap to take. And it's hard to say if, loving being on the road and traveling and visiting new places equates to loving living out of my car and doing that all the time. And another one of the obvious pros of it is you should be able to save money. Now, gas and groceries and, the way you eat may be affected by living that way. You can't just stock up on fresh meat and stuff all the time, depending on what your setup is. So I imagine a lot of people end up eating less healthy, maybe, just probably more fast food. Not that that's inherently unhealthy, depending on how you choose to eat. But, there are definitely expenses involved, but you're not paying, $500 to $1,000+ a month in rent, depending on where you live and what kind of place you're renting, or if you own a place. But it really depends, I think, on how you choose to live and what your setup is that would determine whether or not you're able to, you know, really save a lot of money. But in any case, I think saving money is definitely possible and more or less likely for the average person doing van life. So definitely not having to worry about paying rent is one of the big pros of van life. And another one of the big pros I think would be experiences, and that kind of goes into traveling and whatnot, I guess. But I feel like so many people live their lives where they just kind of post up somewhere, they buy a house, they rent an apartment, whatever, they get a normal job, and that's it. They're just trying to make that work and, you know, see what the next step is 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And a lot of people obviously will take vacations and travel and stuff like that too, but your experiences, your ability to travel, all that stuff is very much limited when you go into a normal traditional lifestyle. So if you're the type of person that hasn't gotten out and done a whole lot, if you're trying to find new experiences in life and make sure you don't miss out on things while you have the time and energy and money and youth or whatever to take advantage of it, van life and stuff definitely puts you in a position to have experiences I don't think you would really have otherwise. It definitely is a unique lifestyle and opens you up in a very unique way to experience life. And I think it's also a bit more of like a traditional way of living. Besides, you know, obviously I don't think people who lived on farms and stuff back in the day were able to travel that much, but in terms of like being nomadic, of being able to just kind of experience things in life and not sitting in one place all the time, I think there is a bit of a, you know, a call of the wild or something about it. And of course there are a number of cons when it comes to trying to live this way, and one of those big cons is safety. Living out of your car, there's any number of things that you have to worry about in terms of being on the road, unfamiliar places all the time, the fact that your car is your only shelter, and it's also like the only thing you have going for you. So if something happens to your car, you're in a very bad situation. And a couple of the other obvious concerns that you would have, I think, are just discomfort, not being able to have a place to go back and call your home base, not being able to just, oh, I'm done for the day, I want to go home and relax, any of that stuff. And of course, like bathroom. I think that's one of the big ones a lot of people think about is like, where do you go to the bathroom? How do you take a shower? How do you deal with any of the number of like personal grooming things that people have to do? There's just a lot of the typical things I think that we take for granted in life. You know, if you have to shave or go to the bathroom, if you have an upset stomach, anything that's like, you know, emergency personal care issues that can arise at any given time. Having your own secluded place away from everyone else and being able to take care of those things in private, that's a pretty big comfort that we all tend to take advantage of and enjoy whenever we have it available to us, and you're surrendering all of that pretty much when it comes to van life. So that's a pretty big hurdle, especially if you have, like my wife and I, we have anxiety issues and stuff. So trying to overcome the dependence on comfort and privacy and things like that is definitely one of the bigger hurdles that we've both tried to contend with in our hypothesizing and theorizing about this potential idea. So another thing that I think, I mean, it kind of comes with van life, but another one of the issues you have to contend with is your furnishings. Like I said, my wife and I just moved this past year, February, into our apartment, and since then, you know, you acquire things. You get a washer and dryer, you get furniture, things that you need or, you know, desire to make things more comfortable to live. And to go from that to being like, well, we're going to live in our car now or buy a van and convert it or whatever, you have to figure out what you're going to do with all that stuff. It's all like new things, or even if you've lived in a place for a while, you have to figure out what you're going to do, because there is the issue of how long is the van life thing going to last? Because ultimately, I don't think most people expect to live till they're old and gray on the road, you know, living in a van or whatever. Obviously, I think some people do. There are plenty of older people who are getting into it, but what do you do when you are getting old and sick or whatever? Like, how does that work? So you have to figure out, you know, is this stuff just going to be something I get rid of? Am I going to try to keep it somewhere, pay for storage? Do I have family or friends that would take it? Things like that, because especially in our particular case, our consideration is that this stuff is all pretty much freshly acquired new stuff. And if we just went into this lifestyle, it seems kind of wasteful. It's like, I mean, even if you sell it or whatever, it's like we acquired these things for us to live, and now we're gonna try to change things up and not need it anymore. So it's like we basically just got it. So I don't know, it's harder to justify under those circumstances, but it's not something that would, you know, stop you from doing it. It's just one of those other little things, you know, another little bump in the road that makes you wonder about the value of what you're doing and the how realistic it is, basically. Now, one thing I do have to say that my wife and I have going for us is that we don't currently have any pets. We don't have or want children. So a lot of the things that I think a lot of people find limiting with that, like a lot of people have to wait until after they don't have kids, or if they're going to do it, they have to try to, you know, sort out how they're going to bring their kids along, how that's all going to work out for everybody and things like that. And so we're in a very kind of fortunate position, I guess, in that regard, in terms of just being able to do whatever we feel like or whatever we have to, whatever. And of course, since we're not really interested in having kids, we don't have to worry about like how this decision is going to affect the future of wanting to start a family or any of that crazy stuff. One of the last things I'll say as far as a potential benefit, in particular for my wife and I and people like us, is that we both suffer from anxiety issues. And it's really easy when you have anxiety to just find a little corner, a little hole in the wall and try to hide in it, even if you don't want to. Just, you know, when you're not inclined, when you're afraid, when you have anxiety to get out around people and do things that make you uncomfortable, it's easy to hide away in your comfort zone. And van life is certainly not going to allow you to sit there in your comfort zone. So that's one of the big things that we've been considering in regards to all this, is wondering if it's actually a therapeutic thing to do, a way to go about it. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at and what we're thinking, what's churning around in our heads and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. That's all I wanted to do with this video. It's just kind of a way to confront the idea, bring it out into the open air, and maybe put it out in a way that other people can maybe have a chance of chiming in on and give us some advice, some opinions on the idea of van life. Maybe anyone who's done it or who is looking into doing it or whatever can find something relatable here and maybe chime in with their thoughts and opinions and advice on it. Who knows? So that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see where this goes, if anywhere or nowhere.